In this tutorial, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks to make sure that your website looks good on mobile and on desktop. So to start off with, I'm just going to add a button onto the page, and I'm going to change the text to hello. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the button so that it has a width of 600 set on the button. In fact, let's make that 800. Oops, 800. So my button's now 800 wide. So I'm going to save this page. And this looks okay on desktop, but let's see what happens when we start looking at this on other screen sizes. So if I look at this on tablet, you can immediately see that it's cut off on the right hand side. If I look at this on mobile, it's even worse. Why is that? The reason is that when you set widths or heights on content, the widths and heights apply to all screen sizes. So setting widths and heights is actually not a great idea if you can avoid it. The best thing to do is actually to use margins and padding to restrict the size. So let's see how I could have achieved a similar effect using margins and padding and see what that does for the different screen sizes. So to start off with, I'm going to clear the width and height, and let's have a look, and I will set some padding on this. Where are we? In fact, margins. I'll set some margins on this. So let's say I want to have a 60 pixel margin just on the right hand side, or maybe an 80 pixel margin on the right hand side. Okay, so now let's save this again and see what it looks like on all the different screen sizes. So tablet, it looks fine. Mobile, it looks fine as well. So that's the first big tip. Don't use widths and heights unless you absolutely have to. Now, what about the situation where you do have to use a width and height to get something really particular for the way you want it to look? Well, thankfully, we have this other settings for controlling content that's different on different screen sizes. So let's say that on desktop, I know I want to have this button, and I want to have a green button on desktop, and I want it to be exactly 400 pixels wide. So let's have a look. Where are we? Let's go into my basic settings, and I'll make this 400 pixels wide. And I'm just going to clear off the margins that we set on here earlier. And so I'll save this. So this is now 400 pixels wide, green button for desktop. Now 400 is actually not wide enough to look terrible on mobile. But let's just say that I know that for mobile I want this button to be red and slightly narrower. So how would I do that? Well, the trick is that you can select the element and go into the display settings. You can see that these icons here correspond to widescreen, desktop, tablet and mobile. And all you do is you uncheck the icons for the screen sizes that this button shouldn't appear on. And to make this even more obvious, I'm going to call this one desktop. And then we're going to switch to a tablet and mobile view. And you see that the button, you actually can't see the button on the page anymore. And so I'm going to add another button here on the page. And the text of this one is going to say mobile. And I'm going to make the background of it red. There we go. And I'm going to change the display settings on this button so that it only displays on tablet and mobile. Now let's save this page and have a look at the live page and see what happens when we make the screen smaller and smaller. So you see it just switches from desktop to mobile when the screen gets to a certain width. And that's really exactly what we're looking for there. So you can use the display settings to show different content for different sizes of screen, the mobile and the desktop. And now the final piece of advice that I have for mobile responsiveness is just make sure to use these preview buttons in the top right hand side to see how it looks. So as a quick recap of what we've just gone over, try not to use widths and heights on elements. Instead use margins and padding to push things around. We have a separate tutorial on margins and padding. And if you absolutely have to control exactly how something's going to look on a certain screen size, use the display settings to hide it on screens where it's just not going to look good, and then add extra content for that screen size. And when you add that extra content, you just remove it from the desktop and laptop screens so that the content is only shown on the correct screen sizes. And that's really it for mobile responsiveness.